just so many things are on my mind right now, and I just want to say that I'm thankful for this great city. I am thankful for the men and women here in this room tonight and across the city. I do have a huge thank you for our first responders. I've had the unfortunate capacity of needing our first responders in the last month on 2 different occasions, and I couldn't be more thankful for them, both for the men and women that make up Canby Fire. They are a true blessing to this community, and I can't say thank you enough. I pray for our city. I pray for our leaders. I pray for just the continued blessings that are bestowed upon this great city. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Thank you. Proclamation this evening for the POW MIA Recognition Day. Whereas the United States of America has participated in many wars calling upon its sons and daughters to fight for their country, and whereas American men and women have been held captive by hostile powers during their military service, and whereas many American prisoners of war were subjected to harsh and inhumane treatment by their captors, which often resulted in death, and whereas Americans are still listed as missing and unaccounted for, and the families and friends of those missing Americans, as well as their fellow veterans, still endure uncertainty concerning their fate. And whereas the sacrifices of Americans still missing are deserving of national recognition and support for continuing priority efforts to determine their fate, and whereas the city of Canby is proud to join with other cities in the state of Oregon and the nation in honoring those still missing. Now, therefore, I, Brian Hodson, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Canby, hereby proclaim September 21st, 2018 as POW MIA Recognition Day in Canby, and encourage all citizens to join in this observance. Given unto my hand this 19th day of September 2018.
There it is. Mr. Mayor, councilors, on behalf of my brothers and sisters who are veterans of Vietnam, we'd like to say thank you for this recognition. Short and sweet. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda this evening is the Canby Fire District bond presentation. Davis, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors and staff. On behalf of the Canby Fire District, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for allowing us to come and talk to you tonight about the upcoming bond resolution 3-542. With me tonight, I also have my management team, Division Chief Matt Dale, Division Chief Todd Gary, our CFO Laurie Fawcett. We also have Wayne Austin, our volunteer coordinator for the fire district. And between these individuals, we've worked very hard to put together the information to our board of directors at the fire district, as well as the information that you'll be receiving tonight. So my hats are off to my management team for helping put this information together.
Good evening. I wanted to start out first by telling you or reminding you a little bit about the fire district. Canby's first fire company was formed 119 years ago in 1899. And a fact about our lobby, we still have the minutes from the first Canby Fire Department volunteer meeting displayed in the lobby. Our service area includes 2 cities, the city of Canby, the city of Barlow, and the unincorporated areas of Clackamas County comprising the 54 square miles. We have accomplished the ISO rating, insurance services rating of a 2 and a 3, which is down from a 5 and an 8, providing a lower cost of insurance to homeowners and businesses. We have 2 fire stations, Station 361, which serves as our administrative center here in town, and the station to the south, 3 miles out of town on Highway 170 near Maxburg Road. Organizationally, we have 20 volunteer fire personnel, 19 career, 2 office personnel, and 1 24-hour duty chief. All firefighters, volunteer and career, are cross-trained as firefighter, paramedics, and EMTs. We deploy those personnel with the following apparatus, which is a mixture of fire engines, water tenders for bringing water to rural areas in the unhydrated areas of our district, and 3 ambulances. We're proud to be one of the only 3 ambulance service providers in Clackamas County, providing 2 ambulances 24 hours a day, and would like to take this opportunity to brag that we are transporting 98% of all patients out of Canby, only having to rely on an outside ambulance about 2 times per month to come in and transport for us.
Okay, in the past, I've provided you copies of the district's strategic plan, and I'm proud to cover a few major accomplishments since we last spoke in regards to the strategic plan. Under Goal 1, under medical life safety, we've increased our staffing, configured our staffing to allow us to get the 2 medic units out 24 hours a day, as well as 1 fire unit. We've met and exceeded our goals in regards to initial response times in the urban areas, suburban areas, as well as the rural area. And we continue to provide and take pride in our medical quality improvement on a regular basis. Also working with the school district, we've accomplished hands-only CPR to 7th and 8th graders, and we do that on an annual basis. Hopefully, so as they continue to grow, they will learn CPR and be able to use that skill when it becomes necessary. Under Goal 2, we work closely with the City of Canby's Police Department on a partnership with emergency management. We have initial response times and effective response forces that we put out on a regular basis. As Matt had covered with you already, we did lower our insurance rating from in the rural area from a 10-8 down to a Class 3, and in the city from a Class 5 down to a Class 2. The city of Barlow is one exception, and that's because they're not considered hydrated areas, and they are considered a Class 3 insurance rating. And we also continue to have the goal of no fire deaths, which we continue to achieve through community risk reduction. We have under Goal 3, community partnerships. We continue to work very closely in the community paramedic program. In other words, we try to go out and prevent incidents from happening, or if we have recall, people that calls for assistance, and we get those calls on a regular basis, Chief Dale and our community paramedic person will go out and work with that person to try to figure out better means than calling 911 for their medical treatment. Yet, if they still need us, we will respond. We work on bridging cultures on a regular basis, and Todd Gary works very closely with the adult community and community risk reduction on falls. Falls are our #1 injuries that we respond to. We've increased the AEDs throughout town and Pulse Point, as well as the smoke alarm program. Every residence or apartment that we go out in. The crews make it a point of making sure to check the smoke alarms to make sure they're working properly. And of course, social media is very big, and we work to try to keep people updated on social media as much as possible. The member culture and environment, we continue to have a wonderful response from our volunteers and our career personnel. We've also are working very closely with the high school on an Explorer program and a student program, so that, and we hope to move forward too with the program at the high school to where they can start earning their associate's degree in fire science or paramedic medicine starting at a junior in high school. So we're working hard to make that happen. And fiscal accountability, we do have a fleet maintenance schedule for future replacement as well as capital. We meet all federal and state auditing standards and have successfully with our audits. And we've replaced some apparatus. Thank you to the Urban Renewal Agency and to you to the city administrator for working out the agreement, because the one new fire truck that we do have running around town was provided by the Urban Renewal Agency, as well as one of our medic units. And at this point in time, had we not had that revenue, I'm not quite sure what we would have done with our aging apparatus. So thank you very much.
So as a public agency and a service agency, 83% of our funding comes from tax dollars at a permanent rate of $1.54, and the voter approved and renewed local option levy of 45 cents per thousand, making Canby Fire at an extremely competitive price per thousand for offering fire and ambulance services in Clackamas and the Portland metro area. That money, as with any service organization, a majority of that goes to personnel who provide the service, and the remainder of that money goes to capital, materials, and contingency. So as you are well aware, our population in our fire district, including Canby, continues to increase. So does our 911 calls. This last year, 2,888, and we are assuming that we will continue with that trend. As with that, we continue to do more ambulance transports. So last year was 1,371, and we are on schedule to surpass that also in 2018. To meet that, those demands, we have added and reconfigured staffing to provide that service.
Okay, and so with that, we're going to talk about the bond resolution 3-542, which will be on the November 6th ballot as a capital bond measure. What's important too is this is the first ever capital bond measure presented to the citizens of Canby by our board of directors. I can tell you that the fire board did their due diligence in regards to reviewing several options, and staff worked very, very hard to meet the objectives of our board in trying to bring this down as much as possible, but still achieve what we need moving forward for the next 20 years. The board voted unanimously to support a $4.9 million bond issue on November 6th. And again, that bond measure number is 3-542. If the district is successful in passing the bond, this will allow the district to set aside capital funds as we move forward. And the board wanted to make sure that they saw a depreciation schedule for apparatus to ensure that we wouldn't have to come back to the voters 5 or 10 years from now asking for more money for apparatus, because we're going to set aside those necessary funds for capital replacement as we move forward. As I stated earlier, in 2015, the ERA did allocate funding to replace a fire engine and 1 medic unit. Without these funds, we'd still be operating the same pieces of apparatus. So the bond, what will the bond provide? It's going to provide updating our medical response equipment and our firefighting equipment. It will make the necessary repairs and improvements to the main fire station. A fire station was built in 1996 with one remodel. Back in 96, we had right around 5 people, and some were day staff people. And today we have 16, as well as the volunteer force and students that also spend 24 hours a day at the fire station. It is inadequate for unisex bathrooms, and it does not provide what I feel is necessary for female facilities, as the dorm rooms are wide open and the female facilities are very, very small. So it would provide for an upgrade to the main fire station and primarily into the living area where the firefighters live, as well as bathroom facilities and the training facility, which the public uses on a regular basis. And again, this fire station, the main fire station, I can tell you, is in an excellent location for a response matrix. And it has a good foundation for us to build on. So we're fortunate that we're not in front of you today saying that we're going to be moving that fire station. It also does allow for the major purchase on apparatuses for a ladder truck, as well as refurbishing new medic units, and that would be taking the boxes off of the new medic units and putting them onto a new chassis. We purposely did that in order to save money so that we can repurpose those current boxes and put them onto chassis, as well as one fire truck and one brush unit. The one brush unit is the 1992 brush unit that we bought used, as well as the reserve engine that we have right now was the first line unit that paid people were using, that we replaced with the current engine that you see us operating today. It does, with community input, it does provide for a north end medical aid station. I've been in discussions with the city administrator and looking at opportunities to do a public-public type of partnership as we move forward. It does allow some funds that if we're able to locate a spot on the north side, that we would be able to remodel that facility and put 2 paramedics out there on a medical aid unit in the event that we did have a train that blocked the tracks, as over 70% of our business is medical calls. And emergencies are dependent upon response times. So that's why it's so important to have that. And it does allow for buying some property in the future for a future fire station on the north side of the city as well. As growth continues to happen, we're concerned that all the properties will get bought up and that the fire will be able to find property to put a north side fire station. And it does allow for some upgrades to our rural fire station out on Highway 170. Is in dire need of update. The board of directors did do a minor remodel in there for the 3 existing student firefighters that we have in there. But we do need to upgrade to try to put at least 3 more student firefighters out there. And this would allow us to do that, as well as the 2 apparatus that you see are the 2 apparatus that we'd be replacing if the bond is successful in passing.
So the cost of the bond at 4.9 over 10 years is estimated to be at 28 cents per thousand. The median value home for Canby given to us would cost out at approximately $78 per home per year. And as we near our 70th anniversary of providing ambulance service next year to Canby, and the 119 years that this station has served Canby, one thing has remained the same, and that's every member's dedication in serving our community.
Thank you, and we're here to answer any questions, plus the management team. If we can't answer them, they will try to for you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Questions, comments?
I'd just like to congratulate the fire district. I know that their board wrangled and massaged and came up with ideas and brainstormed and did lots of things to come up with a very good plan and a unanimous vote on the plan that they put forward. So I congratulate you guys on overcoming that and getting such unanimous from everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Next on the agenda this evening is the introduction of a new economic development and tourism coordinator. Our economic development director, Jamie Stickle. Are you tired of hearing that title yet?
Not yet.
Good.
Probably not ever. Mayor and Council, I am very happy to introduce you to Calvin Lesueur, who is our new Economic Development and Tourism Coordinator. He comes to us most recently from the city of Forest Grove. He's got a lot of great history, and we saw a lot of candidates that had a lot to bring to the table, different backgrounds, different experiences, and through 2 different interview panels, we really thought that Calvin was the best choice for what we need moving forward. So I think that he's going to do great things. I think that you guys are going to be as impressed with him as I am, and I'll give him a couple minutes to just introduce himself.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Said plenty, but let me see if I can add to it. So I've previously worked in the Office of Economic Development at both the City of Forest Grove and the City of Boulder, Colorado. I'm proud to be a returned Peace Corps volunteer. I served in Paraguay in South America from 2014 to 2016, where I did community development projects. And I'm very happy to be in Canby. I'm very impressed so far by the city staff, the incredibly active and engaged citizen volunteers that I've already worked with quite a bit, and looking forward to working with the business community to help Canby grow and thrive. So thank you so much.
Welcome. Welcome. I think you guys are next on our agenda as well.
I am not. I'm turning it over to Calvin. I just want to make sure that you...
I would also add that Calvin is fluently bilingual. He's a Spanish speaker as well. His experience in Paraguay, and he is something that we find very endearing. On the second floor, he is an animal lover. He brought his dog back from Paraguay, and his dog's name is Dog. And the Paraguayan language, you pronounce it?
Jaguar.
Jaguar. A jaguar without the R.
Right, yeah.
Right.
So it's great to have you here. I'm really enjoying
working
with you.
Well, as Carol comes up here, so we're moving in. The next piece here is the Heritage and Landmark Commission 2019-2020 program plan.
So, Mr. Mayor, council members, at your August 15th meeting, Jamie did a presentation, and as part of that presentation, she did a look back to what we had accomplished in the previous 18 months. And I think, Mr. Mayor, you're the one that asked the question, what's next? And so it seemed like, Jamie gave you sort of a high-level answer. It seemed like we probably owed you just a little bit more detail. So, in front of you, you have in your packet our PowerPoint presentation. What we're going to talk about today is the process we went through to get to the plan, the outcome of that process, and then we'll talk a little bit about the operations of the Heritage and Landmark Commission and how we're hoping to improve those even more. So the planning process itself, it was different this year because we really spent a lot of time thinking about what we were doing and where we wanted to go. And one of the things that's different about this year was over the last 2 or 3 years, people have come knocking on our doors. Some of them have been members, some of them outsiders saying, hey, have you thought about doing this? So we've been sort of accumulating this long list of projects, and it was sort of a time to step back and look at those and say, what can we do now? What's the value? And so we went through a 2-step process in terms of criteria. But we compiled the project list, reviewed it as a team, And then we went out and solicited some input from our city administrator, from Councilor Parker. Councilor Parker actually attended our meeting where we did the first cut of the criteria against the projects. And then we also incorporated the recommendations that we got from the Certified Local Government Review. We had that a year ago where we got recertified as a certified local government, which was important in terms of our grant funding. We then sat down and set out a list of criteria. And that was really to evaluate on a 1 to 5 scale each of the projects by each criteria. And then we also, as you look at the projects, some of them are what I'd call plug-in ready. We can pull them off the shelf and we can run with them because we've done them before, or we're just at that point. But a lot of them require a lot more work. So we had to go through a second cut where we said, what's ready now, what might be ready for 2019, 2020, because quite frankly, we can't do all this in 2 years. We probably can't do all of this in 10 years, actually. But the idea was to sort of segregate it that way. So what you're looking at on the next page is the proposed project list. This is sort of the accumulation of everything that anybody's recommended to us, plus what we've heard as we went through just the process of compiling these projects. I will say one thing, Tier 3 project, just so you know what that is, because that certainly isn't very explanatory. There are a lot of property owners who are not really interested in having a historic zoning overlay on their property for all sorts of reasons, which makes sense. But in many cases, these are properties that have historical significance, they have historic integrity, and so this is a way to think about those in a way where we don't put any restrictions on the property, but we still highlight them, and hopefully through that highlighting process, it will build momentum to preserve the property, and maybe we might even just lure 1 or 2 property owners into the local registry. So that's sort of the intent of that. The criteria. This was our first cut. We wanted to, of course, to be consistent with our mission as defined in the city code. We don't want to duplicate the work of anybody else, including the Historical Society or any other organization in town. That's not what we're about. We want to make sure that the project supports city goals, which is why I ran it by Rick Robertson and Councilor Parker. We also don't want to create any ongoing maintenance costs for the city. That's not our goal here. There's no way to sustain that typically, and so it doesn't make any sense to do anything like that. We want to have projects that provide an opportunity for public engagement and collaborative opportunities with other organizations. And quite frankly, we need an HLC member who's excited about the project and wants to take it on. So in terms of readiness, we segregated into 3 categories, and this was our second cut, things that are doable in 2019. The research is complete, we know what the plan is, and we've got a funding source identified. Potentially doable, maybe we'll get them done in 2019, but there's still more work required. And then future projects, these are things that require extensive planning and research, and we're probably looking at a 3 to 5 year window for most of these. Our goal was not to cut anything, but we actually ended up doing that. I mean, if a project is worthwhile and worth doing, we should keep it on the list, even if we can't do it in the next couple of years. But as we went through the list, the local heritage tree project, that was something that came up about 5 years ago. It's never gotten any traction. We've never had any support for it. So it was the one project we literally crossed off the list. No one spoke up and said, I want to do that. The oral history project and the annual essay contest are really, we decided, more activities. They're activities that support a heritage project. And they're important to keep in mind and to use as we need them, but they're not something that actually become an end-all in themselves. And then the second cut is the readiness assessment. And you can see that the Zion marker repair, that's something, we've done that a lot. We know how to do that pretty quickly and pretty well. The marker repair, the marker cleaning, and the local landmark project is, we're trying to get, first of all, the depot on the local registry. That's phase 1, and so we're still waiting for the Canby Historical Society board to make a determination. I think it's not a question of if, I think it's a question of when they're going to do it. But also at the same time, our web information at the city site, but also on the Visit Canby site, is pretty skimpy, and that's part of the local landmark project, to get a more robust information, group of information on both of those sites. And the preservation plan. The preservation plan we will, I'm going to just bring that over.
I can pass it out if you
Yeah,
like.
we have an example for you of what a preservation plan looks like. The city of Redmond was recommended to us as a city that's about our size, and they have a preservation plan in place that they implemented in 2015. And it was a recommendation from the State Historic Preservation Office that we take a look at that. And my first reaction was, oh my gosh, really? Do we want to do that? And then I looked at the Redmond plan and I went, oh wow, this is really amazing. And so I've looked at some other plans. Every city does things a little bit differently. Salem has a fabulous plan, but of course they're a much larger city with much more resources. Redmond's more our size, more the 20,000 or less population size. Potentially doable in 2019, 2020. We've talked about the All-Star Heritage designation for Canby. We're still missing a couple of pieces. And the fact that we lost our Main Street program involvement meant we lost one of the criteria, so we've got to make up for that. I don't know that it's still doable, but we've kept it on the list. Expanding our web info once we get on the sites is important. And then, of course, the Tier 3 project. And I really think we're going to get some traction on that one. I think we're going to do it this year. The future projects is support of the city parks, Latinx Heritage Project, Farming Heritage Project, Indigenous Peoples, and a Veterans Recognition Program. So those are just things that are on our list for the future. We passed out the preservation plan, and I think Calvin can talk to how it might fit with his work that he's doing in terms of value. When I talked to Brian Brown, I was specifically interested in, what do you think, Brian? Because he's done this sort of thing before. He's been a planning director in communities where he was responsible for a preservation plan. Oftentimes they sit on a shelf, and that's not what we want to have happen, but I think we've got some good examples in both Cottage Grove and Salem and Redmond and some other communities where they're not sitting on the shelf. Cottage Grove actually did their plan 5 years ago, and they have met every single goal. So if a Cottage Grove could do it, we can do it, I think. So, and the nice thing is, as I understood from Brian, it's probably about time to think about updating the comp plan anyway. This is going to be a piece that would be in the comp plan, but instead of paying whoever you pay to do that particular update to the comp plan, this would be something you could literally plug in, and trust me, it will be much better quality than probably what you'd get from the comp plan. So it's not a complete offset in terms of cost, but there would be some offset. It would be something you wouldn't have to do. Of course, it provides a roadmap. It offers an opportunity for community input. If you look at the Redmond plan, you'll see they did a lot of focus groups and interviews and that sort of thing. And of course, 50% of the costs can be covered or would be covered by the Certified Local Government Grant. This is very high on their list of priorities. We would not have a problem with this at all. So, you want to talk about?
Sure. Just briefly, I think the preservation plan is a great roadmap for the excellent work that is happening at the Heritage and Landmark Committee. It seems to be the most involved citizen group that we have. So having a roadmap for that, as well as promoting tourism in and around Canby, of which a major component is the heritage and history of the area. And I think the list of projects that have already been identified kind of speak to that the preservation plan has somewhere to go and has an existing framework to build on. That would be really nice for the work that we're doing in economic development and tourism, as well as for the Heritage and Landmark Commission.
Yep. I think one of the things I'd point out in the Redmond plan is the consultant who did that actually took a look at economic development and at heritage tourism, and that was built into that plan. And as we are working on the RFP, which we're working on right now, we can shape that, and we can ask the consultant to think about it through different lenses. And one of them certainly would be heritage tourism and also economic development. But also, I think another really critical part is we're part of the heritage area. And so how do we get ready and think about the management plan for the heritage area that will eventually be required, and how do we plug into that? And historic preservation is a huge issue on each of those heritage area management plans. And if we're ready, that is just another little plus for Canby.
And that's the National Heritage Area centered around Willamette Falls.
Yep. So now, even with the CLG funding, the cost might be prohibitive from a city perspective. So that's why we're going out with the RFP now before we even get to the grant deadline, because we want to know, is this a go or a no-go? We don't want to be scrambling at the last minute. So obviously, we'll put out the RFP. The idea is to have it out sometime in the early October timeframe. We want to give consultants plenty of time to get back to us. And then once we've got the results, hopefully we get some, we'll sit down with the city administrator and we'll talk through, is the city doable? So that's the plan.
One more point from a community development perspective. Something we can include in the RFP, and we've seen examples of, is having a lot of community involvement, which is a process that has community development outcomes in and of itself. It's nice to get people engaged and talking about these things.
Yeah, and I think the Redmond plan, I think they kind of did the more traditional, and I'm hoping that whoever we get as a consultant will be a little more creative with using social media and, all sorts of ways that, what the library's doing with the Survey Monkey. That's the kinds of things that I think we can do that are easier to grab a larger input than calling a focus group. That is always tough to get people to. So I've been doing this now for 5 years. My passion since I took over as chair has been creating a sustainable organization, because our predecessor organization died and ceased to exist for about 7 years, and I don't think that's the right thing for Canby. The growth prospects are incredibly, they're looming. We've got a lot of people in the community that are very worried about losing our small town feel. And it seems to me that we have value that we can add to making sure that we retain some of that by having good links to our heritage. So creating a sustainable organization, Matt, we had to get community support. That was the first thing we have to do. And I think we've done a fairly good job, comprehensive communication plans, alliances with other organizations, and you got to accomplish something. So we needed a record of accomplishment where people could look at us and say, yep, they get stuff done. And I don't think I wanted to say event-based programs that lend themselves to events. So we're having a public event in a space that's not a museum, but it's actually in a library or in a park, someplace where people actually live, work, and play. We wanted to create a dynamic organization, so we wanted to expand it, which we have. Thank you very much. I wanted to get more involved, volunteer base, and we have. And we needed a distinct brand and position. People need to know that we're part of the city and that we are a Heritage and Landmark Commission and we're not running the Depot Museum. And then establish professional standardized practices. And there's a couple of things that are happening like within the next week or two, actually one of them has already happened, that kind of help us in that area. On October 1st, the State Historic Preservation Organization is coming to our meeting, and we are going to get training on the design review process. If you look at our code, that's one of the things we're responsible for. So I think it's important that we get some training on it and understand how that works. Also, whenever we've gotten new members, I've always done an orientation, which usually meant that I sat down at my laptop, printed off a bunch of stuff, threw it in a folder, and then met somebody for coffee. And when I joined the Willamette Falls Heritage Area Coalition Board, the executive director and the president sat down with me, and I got a handbook. And I thought, wow, it's hokey, it sounds crazy. And then Irene Green did the same thing when I joined the library board. And it somehow lends this sort of feeling of the importance of what you're doing, that you're taking on, and it also gives you some information about where the organization has been. So we now have a handbook. And it includes the city code, a history of the organization and a current plan, some general preservation information that you get off the State Historic Preservation website that kind of gives you a little bit of a primer on, the basics, and some of our recent reconnaissance level and intensive level surveys. Plus there's a roster in here. So that's now part of establishing each of our new members. In terms of those strategies I just talked about, we did hit a couple of milestones in 2017, 2018 that told me we're making progress. We got our first formal complaint. I was thrilled. You don't get community support if nobody knows you exist. And also, it was way neat that the complaint went to the mayor and not to Nora Clark. I thought that was fabulous. And it was also fabulous that the complaint was very thoughtful. The person wasn't just complaining. They were saying, you know, I've read about what you're doing, and we think that you've overlooked this person that shouldn't have been overlooked. So, I mean, you can't have a better complaint than that. That was fabulous. I mean, they're actually paying attention to what we're doing. We also had our first nice letter to the editor and a standing room only event. The other really biggie for me was at the Zion Memorial Cemetery cleaning. We had representation from 5 other organizations. That was a new milestone for us. We've never had 5 before. So it was the Garden Club, the American Legion, the Rotary, the Kiwanis, and also the Canby Historical Society. So that was great. And then this is the first year I've had to post special quorum notices. I remember in 2016 when we did the Lee Tree designation, there were actually more city council people there than there were HLC members. So it's nice now that so many people from the HLCs show up that we have to post special quorum notices. There are some things I think we still need to do in terms of operations. We need to establish metrics. We need to have targets and actuals for each of our projects. We need to be giving you a semi-annual at least financial report, source of funds, use of funds, and our in-kind value. You deserve a report from us. We're spending money, not a lot of money, but where is the money coming from and what are we doing with it and what are we achieving with that money? I think we need to do more standardization of documenting our projects. It's not good that we all sit around with things in our head. We need to get that stuff documented so it can be passed along. That means that the organization has some organizational memory and history and processes. I think we still need to improve communications, expand and strengthen our alliances, and last of all, we need to rotate the leadership. Sustainable organizations do not have the same leadership. They rotate. And so I have been doing this now for 5 years. We are beyond the point of stagnant. So we are going to, at our first meeting in 2018, we will be, or 2019, gosh, how things are getting away from me here. We will be selecting a new chair and a new vice chair for the Heritage and Landmark Commission. I'll stay on for at least a couple of years, but we'll get a new member. So, anything you want to add?
Well, just speaking of the active and engaged citizens in Canby, here we are, despite a cold.
I didn't sneeze on anybody. That's great.
And I'm, yeah, very happy to be the staff liaison on the Heritage and Landmark Commission.
I'm only going to make a statement, and Carol, in all honesty, really, I think the idea of this group getting stagnant with you being there in the helm for 5 years, I don't think that's true by any stretch of the imagination. I think this group has moved along the way it has because of your leadership and because of your passion around it. So I appreciate the position of changing of leadership to prevent the stagnation. I think you are, and this group is far from that right now. I understand the need and desire and to do that. I'm glad to hear that you will stay on and be heavily involved. I'm glad I asked the question of what's next. This is definitely a great picture of what's next and what's to come, and I agree. As you were talking about, how do we, the small town feel piece, and to me, it is heritage, it is history, and it is the people that make up a community that keep that small town feel. And I think the last piece about the connections with how does this link to business recruitment as we look at that, and what do we do when a new business moves in that is not a Canby-based business? How do we get them at least even a little bit of an understanding of what it means to be in Canby? I think the Historical Society, that partnership, and Peter the Choir here, and the importance of that partnership and everything they've got going on, and I think there's a lot of opportunity, I think, still to move forward with those pieces. And then even with new people moving into Canby, we've got, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, 300 new homes slated in the next 3 years, 2 to 3 years. So how do we connect those? We go, let's see, what's the average? 300 homes, 2 per, so 600 to 700 people. How do we connect them to Canby and what Canby's about? And so is that working with realtors and the business. How do we do the chamber and whatnot? So I think there's a lot of great pieces here that you guys have started. So please let me know how I can help keep ginning it up and keep it going. So that's my piece on that. So I'm sure Councilor Parker, you have something.
Calvin, while you take us back to slide 7, I'll mention something to Carol. You mentioned the Willamette Falls organization. You can say, make my work on councilor comments even easier by talking about the 2 events that are taking place tomorrow.
The events that are taking place tomorrow. Oh, yeah, we've got a social event tomorrow. The Clackamas County Heritage Coalition, Council, whatever it is. I'm a member of it. You would think I could remember the name. We're doing a social tomorrow at the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center. So we'll have people there from around the county who are associated with museums or heritage and landmark commissions and other folks there at the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center. And then we also have an event in Westland that is being put on by the Willamette Falls Heritage Area Coalition, and it is a tribal heritage discussion that will be done by the folks from the Cultural Resource Center at Grand Rock. That one I don't have the exact address, but I can send it to you if you need it.
Westland Cider House.
Westland Cider House. Okay.
And it's a rare opportunity to be able to get some of the resources from the Grand Ron Foundation. I just wanted to show this rubric to council and also to our city administrators, since we were just talking about this in our work session when we were talking about community outreach and how an organization can come to conclusions. And this is something that Councilor Dale and I have been noodling around on how you take a series of things and weight them with individual weightings in order to come up with a numerical conclusion. This is the sort of thing that you pay consultants a lot of money to, and here we have a citizens group that's doing it. But I think it's something I'd put in my pocket and maybe show the winning bidder of saying, here's one way for us to take all of these ideas. In our discussion, it was about parks and things you want, and how do you weight them against different factors and come up with a conclusion. So your awesomeness never stops.
First, yes, Carol, you're doing a fantastic job, and we appreciate everything you do. And just one little quick thing, when you mentioned that the one program you scratched off was the Heritage Tree program. Now, we also talked about 2016, the Lee Tree being dedicated. Is that a county or state program then versus a local one? Is that going to keep on a registry?
Yeah, the Lee Tree was a state program.
Okay.
So that's not going to change. That's there. We were talking about, and this is when we were still groping around early on, figuring out what are we doing and where are we. It seemed like we could leverage that to maybe doing something citywide. Well, it turned out there's already a county program that's sort of in place that did that. And so we'd be sort of duplicating, and it just didn't have the pizzazz that some of the others, or the meaning, the purpose that some of the others did. So.
Okay, thank you.
I love this commission, and I'm really excited about being able to connect it with tourism. You and I have talked about previously about with all of the tourism activities happening around the Oregon or the National Heritage area that we'll be looped into, and the Willamette Falls project, how important it is for us to find our connection to that for both heritage purposes, community purposes, but also for economic development purposes and tourism purposes. And then also in terms, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for the viability of a historic preservation plan, because I've been kind of flipping through it while I was listening, and one of the questions they asked the community was, why is it important to you preserve the heritage? And it looks like almost 80% of the respondents said retention of community character, which is a significant part of what citizens of Canby look for. It's consistent with our city goals, and if we can plug it into the other things we're doing, both the Parks Master Plan, future comprehensive plan update, economic development, it seems like it could kind of be this hub that strings everything together in a way that has a lot of potential. And so I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for the cost to be low enough to make it an option for us, because I think it's pretty impressive. So nice work as usual. Thank you for all of your volunteer work.
I have one one thing. I'd like all the community partnerships that you guys have established. Like, that's, I think, really positive, and your emphasis on getting things done. One thing I had a question on is you mentioned the Main Street connection. You don't have the Main Street connection anymore. Is that a product of us changing the job title, or is that a Rick question maybe, or a mayor question? But our Main Street program, like, what does that even look like now, or does it? Because that changed right when Jamie took over.
Yeah, that's a little bit outside the scope of this conversation, but I will provide you just a real brief comment on that. Our Main Street program was focused on about a 6 square block area, and what we've done is we have taken away the limits of the 6 square blocks and recognized that we have businesses throughout the city of Canby, and so our efforts now in economic development are not going to be limited to that 6 square blocks. They're going to include the entire city. So while we still have an associate membership in the National Main Street program, where our focus is going to be much more broadly defined, we're going to make sure that we are a supportive agency to all of the businesses in the community and not just those that are in our downtown core.
Oh, that's great. That's good enough for now. Thank you.
Any comments? Very good. Great. Carol, thank you. Appreciate it. Calvin, thank you. Welcome aboard. Aboard, Calvin. All right, we'll move into communications. Anything right now?
Yes, I just have one new fact I'd like to share with you today. We did receive a mural application from Hanlon Development Group to place a very attractive mural on the east side of our old PD building. The application was submitted, was found to be complete, and all the conditions were met. The applicant provides a proposed timeline. This was a unique application because the applicant was not requesting any urban renewal funds to do the project. So it took the financial component out of the project, and the appeals or the approval process fell to the administrative aspect of the review process itself. The mural has been reviewed and recommended for approval by the Canby Arts and Culture Committee and the Facade Improvement Committee, sitting as the Public Mural Advisory Committee. We distributed a meeting notice, hand-delivered to adjoining businesses and property owners within 200 feet as our code requires. We also mailed that same notice so that there were 2 opportunities for people to know about the meeting that we conducted yesterday evening at 7 p.m. in this room. There were no people in attendance at the meeting, but we did conduct the meeting. In my capacity as Urban Renewal Director, I have the authority and responsibility to make the final determination. I determined that the application was complete, and based on the recommendation of both the Arts and Culture Committee and the Facade Improvement Committee, I authorized the developer to proceed with the placement of the mural on the east side of the old PD building. One of the component pieces for this project was that the developer had to be in agreement in executing a public mural easement, which grants to the city the right to access the property at any time to compel the owner of the building to maintain the property, and if the maintenance falls below a standard established by the city, that the city can compel the developer to remove the mural, or based on the developer's failure to remove the mural, the city is authorized to go in and remove it itself and then charge the developer the cost associated with that removal. That's all been done. We expect that the project will commence, weather permitting, probably this Friday.
Anything else? No. All right. We'll move into our first opportunity for citizen input and community announcements. If you want to address the council on a non-agenda item, please fill out a yellow card like this, like Irene has, and get it to Kim, and you'll get an opportunity to come up and address us as well, and we'll do our best to help answer or, get you the answer as quickly as we can. So, Irene, you're my only yellow card tonight.
Good evening. My name is Irene Brashears. I'm with the Canby Aurora VFW 6057 Auxiliary. My cohort, Jerry Baggy, left with the proclamation. I apologize. I thought it was at 7:30, so I thought I'm really early. I go, where's everybody? Why is everybody in the council? And so I saw that. On my part, as the auxiliary, we always traditionally give the council, the mayor and the council, POW MIA envelope in remembrance to never forget. Getting dinner coming up that we always do. So, Aurora.
Thank you, Irene.
So we ask you, please don't forget our POW.
Thank you, Irene.
Folks, family, and thank you for the privilege of reminding the citizens of Canby to never forget. So thank you on behalf of our auxiliary for this opportunity to address you.
Thanks, Irene. No other yellow cards. I'll move into mayor's business. Short list, I'll go quickly. So the council had a work session this evening. We just had prior to our council meeting, just reviewing initial request for proposal that we're working on. So we're looking to go out and do an update to the parks master plan. So tonight was just going through the initial proposal language and working on any of the language and details for that piece so that we can get that out and continue that process moving forward. Last night, staying with a parks theme, last night the council, the park advisory board, and a few members of the bike and ped committee toured several of our parks, and we were looking at some of the maintenance pieces as well as looking at just kind of the levels of the park and where we view them currently and where we maybe want to see them in the future. So it was a great, loaded up in a cat bus and drove around and took a look at Community Park, Wade Park, Maple Street, and a host of others. So I think, I'm sure a couple of the councils will share some ideas or thoughts on that. I want to thank the Canby Fire District Chief, thank you, and with support from Canby PD for another 9/11 remembrance ceremony. It's always hard to say that that's a good event, but you guys would do a great job with that, and so thank you for keeping that going in our community, so thank you. C4, so Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, I'll let Councilor Hensley address because I did not make that meeting. And then just a little, I found it to be interesting information. So speaking with a developer, and they do buildings similar to the one that we are currently sitting in, and come to find out through conversation with them that currently building rates per square foot are at about $325 a square foot. So in relative terms, when we pulled the trigger and started doing this project, our cost was $188 a square foot. So had we waited, and we've always talked about that, had we waited so much as almost a month or 60 days, this would either not have happened or been scaled down dramatically. So I thought that was just the state of building affairs right now and development in I think across the country, but specifically in the Portland metro area. And this developer is saying that, and they've got projects like this just lining up still. And so, and several, I think a couple municipalities are in queue. And so I can't imagine $325 a square foot and being able to pull off something. And his comment was the 325 doesn't even necessarily bring it to what this level of building is. Wow. And so, so I think we did a good job. I think just goes and I guess solidifies our decision as to when we made this happen. So I just wanted to share that piece. We brought up tonight the Willamette Falls project. My understanding with talking with Mayor Holliday is that that property is being worked on and changing hands, or is either selling or is sold to a new landowner. So that project seems to be moving off of life support and actually seems to be coming back to life. So I think everything that we talked about here with Calvin and Carol is very fitting with knowing that that project is going to start to, I think, start gaining momentum and moving forward pretty rapidly. So that's all that I have for tonight. We're going to go to the other end of the table, and we're going to start with Councilor Spoon.
Wow.
I know, curveball. Always got to be ready.
Good thing I prepared early. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The parks tour last night was great. I was impressed with the bus driving as well, as we went through some places that I wasn't sure we're gonna handle us. But and I loved the look of awe on people's faces when a cat bus went places it doesn't typically go. So, but it was really great to sit with the Parks Committee, discuss the parks with them as we went through them, and kind of get a general sense of what everyone's feeling about standard of maintenances, needs, and really truly see the different areas of equipment, playground equipment, and everything else. I think it was really helpful as we proceed through the next steps of our process. El Grito, I attended last weekend and volunteered at the Chamber booth. It was a 2-day event for Mexican Independence Day. I watched my first, and I can't say it, but at a Mexican rodeo, which was very different than anything I had seen before, but fascinating and exciting. And then the music and the community, and there are a lot of, I think, opportunities next year for community to engage in different ways. I saw the fire department there, I saw the police department there, and it was just really neat to see a new event in our community. CTV5 met yesterday, the board. They have now fully accomplished their top priority. They had a top priority as the executive director change as Tony left, and they put in place to manage CTV5 Gordon. They had a couple of top priorities to kind of get the organization reorganized to sustain that change, and they accomplished their number one priority, so now they're going to focus on visioning for future goals. And as they've been doing that, they've been working on other things and including continuing their partnership with the high school, both in planning how CTV5 can partner in classes with the high school, and in working towards live streaming some sporting events and other activities. And I brought Rick in on a conversation about how we can get a live stream license for here so that they can take theirs other places, so that we can help support that. The Canby Adult Center met today. It is, as Executive Director Kathy Robinson said, their busiest time of year. I know that we have open enrollment coming up, so she has Medicare coming in quite a bit right now, some diabetes classes, lots of opportunities to connect over medical questions in the Adult Center. And then next month will be the board retreat, and so I think we'll kind of get some more ideas of where they're headed in the future year.
Councilor Spoon, when you talked about CTV5 and their achieving their number one goal, what was that?
Financial, some debt repayment. Okay. So they're now have completely paid off a debt that came with they had fully paid off a debt that was kind of a little bit burdensome for them, and they aggressively paid it down, but that meant a hold on some other things while they paid that down aggressively to stop the interest slide. And so they made the decision yesterday, I guess, to make the final lump payment, so they have no more consumer debt there and can actually focus on looking forward. Yeah.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Great. Councilor Height.
So the parks tour, it was interesting to hear Matilda, our senior planner, give the backstory, the history of a lot of the parks too. I'm familiar with them now, but I sure didn't know the history too well. So I was glad that we all made it too. That was pretty impressive. El Grito, I volunteered for a couple hours on Sunday. I didn't see too much action. I think I was there too early at the chamber booth, but I was glad to be there present anyway as a kind of a show of symbolic support for the event. So hopefully they felt like it was successful. The Canby Library Foundation, they have their annual film fest, and it's usually on a city council night, but this year it's not. It's on October 10th. 6:30 to 8 p.m. right next door at the theater. And I don't know how many films yet will be showcased, but often there's local filmmakers. So I encourage you guys to go. It's probably like $10. I don't know details at this point, but at least save the date, October 10th, if you're interested. The foundation would appreciate it. It's still National Library Card Sign-Up Month, September is, so if you haven't gotten a card, this is the time to do it. Canby School District, they're recruiting for budget committee members now, 3-year term, have to live within the school district boundary, can't be an employee of the district. So if you know anybody that might be interested, maybe give them the invitation for that. And then I have kind of an interesting factoid. I was talking to the county about the number of registered voters in Canby, because when you go to submit something to the voters pamphlet, right, if you're going to run for office, you have to pay so many dollars depending on how many registered voters. 4 years ago it was $50, now it was $100. I'm like, what? We're over 10,000 voters. We're 11,000 plus registered voters with a population of like 17.5. And I thought, gosh, is this an error? So I double checked with them, and no, that's high. That's like 85% of our adult population. That is impressive, because the national average, I think, is about maybe 72%. So I just wanted to say, cool, like, good Canby, well done Canby, and make sure to vote in November with all of us, so many of us registered. Yeah, but I thought that was a fun fact to share. And that's all I've got.
Great, thank you. Council President Dale.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and my eldest daughter is one of Canby's newest voters. Her card came in the mail, so I took a picture of it and stuck it in her journal. And yeah, kind of one of those moments, because it was just like 2 weeks ago that I brought her home from the hospital, and now she's voting and starting college and everything. Likewise, attended the 9/11 remembrance at Canby Fire. Thank you again, Chief and Matt, for providing rain cover.
Yes.
Poor Matt.
Thank you.
He was keeping all of the speakers dry. It was great. Thank you so much. And attended the park tour last night. The thing I liked about it it was in the folder. It was the history of the logging road trail. That was pretty interesting about that. And if you're interested in that, give Matilda Diaz an email, and she'll send that to you. On the Canby utility front, October 19th will be the open house of their new headquarters and facility. It coincides with Public Utility Day, so it's a chance to get to see the new building they've done. It's pretty amazing. I've been through it, and in the past, they've actually fed me. So there's another incentive to go. October 19th. They don't have the hours yet. It's probably going to be the afternoon. You betcha. And that's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Sure. Councilor Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Likewise, attended the 9/11 ceremony, and I'll just say ditto to Council President Dale's comments. Rain cover was very much appreciated. It was good planning to have that just in case, even though it was such a beautiful morning, I had to go and turn on us, but it's okay. It was a wonderful ceremony as usual. And I likewise attended the parks tour. They kind of covered all the comments, I think, regarding the content of the tour, but I do want to say I'm very impressed with Nancy. I didn't think I would ever say I've been in a long cat bus going down that hill to Community Park. I was thinking, holy cow, are we going to make this? But she did great.
She has skills.
It was an adventure. C4, will suffice it to say we spent a good 90 minutes talking about this, and really the conversation seemed to repeat itself a lot. And at the end of the day, they have decided that they will recommend to the BCC, the Board of County Commissioners, either scenario 1 or scenario 2. Nobody liked scenario 3, so I won't even talk about it. The main differences between scenarios 1 and 2 is the city share of the revenue would be 40% and the county share 60% in scenario 1 with no strategic investment fund. Whereas scenario 2 is 40% to the city, 50% to the county, and 10% of the funds would go into strategic investment fund. And we did briefly talk about Damascus, where Mark Lee adamantly stood up and said, but we've acquired all these acres, and so I think that might not actually become a part of the strategic fund, but rather go to Happy Valley and then to the county based on acreage, I guess.
Yeah.
Traffic.
No, I'm just grumbling because
we're just grumbling, not surprised.
Yeah,
You're
not
right.
surprised, but I don't think that Happy Valley has swallowed up all of Damascus yet.
No,
so
they have not, but they do like to play Monopoly well over there.
Oh, yeah.
So they'll probably
Very
swallow
good
it
at it.
more before we get to this point.
This is vehicle registration, right, to make sure we're on the right?
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah.
Yes. So Traffic Safety Commission, we had a gentleman from the County Safety Commission come and speak to us about some of the things that they're doing, the Traffic Safety Action Plan. They're their goal is 0 fatalities by 2035. And beside design and law enforcement, they're looking at other behavioral factors that play into traffic accidents, mental health, addiction, stress. They're going to be kind of following the Mothers Against Drug Driving model of group norms, finding that the Click It or Ticket program has had a lot of success in reducing seatbelt infractions. Well, they have programs that they want to look at that would have a designated texter to kind of address the teens with their texting and driving.
Designated texter?
A designated texter.
It's a new
trying
era.
to have, the teens are extremely
era.
susceptible to addictions, and screen addiction is very, very key right now. So they're trying to figure out ways to establish peer norms in and around that, as well as looking at things like how legal marijuana is impacting traffic issues, and the fact that driver's ed is not required in Oregon. So they're going to be looking at all these things and coming up with a traffic safety action plan. They're going to come back and visit with us again in a month or two and keep us apprised of that. The other thing that they talked about a little bit at the commission was crosswalk enforcement from the, was it Canby Plaza? I honestly can't remember the name of the shopping plaza, but the one with Safeway's in. The kids that come from school during the lunch break and cross the street in droves to go down to Dutch Bros and don't go up to the crosswalk. They just cross from driveway to driveway. So they're looking at that and seeing what they can do to mitigate that. And that's all I have for the Traffic Safety Commission. Finally, if you haven't seen it yet in the Canby Herald, there is an article about what the the Canby Suicide Prevention Task Force, it's hard to say sometimes, is working on. I know a lot of people have been seeing these. These are still available in the library lobby, as well as if you want me to deliver some to your business, just email me. I'll be glad to jump in my car and take as many over as you want. But in the article, it does talk about a program called Sources of Strength, which is something we're working with the Canby School District, and it mentioned a meeting in that article, so I wanted to address that. We did actually meet with some officials this afternoon, and we had a really good discussion regarding implementation. There was some discussion about possible funding sources to keep it sustainable, and we had a lot of good ideas about that, and we're going to continue to talk about that. We'll have some more conversations, I'm sure, and we'll be meeting again in a few weeks. But one way that the community can help with this effort now is the Rotary, who's actually doing a fundraiser for our task force and for these purposes of getting this kind of programming implemented, is having an auction dinner, tour to Italy. It's October 13th at the Willamette Valley Country Club. And again, it is a fundraiser for this cause. And if you want more information on how to donate or buy tickets, you just go to cambyrotary.com. And that's all I have.
Great. What was the date on that?
October 13th. I believe it's at 5:30 p.m.
Great. Thank you. Councilor Parker.
Mayor, I think Carol did a pretty good job of giving my liaison report for the Heritage Commission, so I can't do anything better than that. The Bike and Pedestrian Committee is going to be meeting next Tuesday here at 6:30. And last night for the tour of the parks, I was happy to see that we had a couple of members of the Bicycle Committee, including our chair, that joined us as well. I like this interdisciplinary type of approach instead of just being siloed with things. I think there's a logical connection between bike and peds and our parks. And then finally, to emphasize tomorrow's events, there are two of them at 4 o'clock at the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center from 4 until 6. There is the Clackamas County Heritage Association's Fall Social. And then at 6 p.m., put on by the Willamette Falls Heritage Association, is a really unique talk about a river runs through it and the relationship of the river to the indigenous peoples that were here. That's at 6 p.m. at the Willamette Ale House in West Lynn.
Councilor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for slowing the bus down long enough to let me jump on last night.
It was funny.
And Canby Youth Basketball would like to remind all the people of the community, anyone, boys or girls, from 1st grade to 8th grade, that registrations close, I believe it's Friday or Saturday of this week. And so kids register. They do have scholarships available for those that may have not enough income to pay the registration fees potentially. You can apply for those. And then I wanted to mention something you might pass on to your C4 friends over there, not to get too comfortable and spend too quickly the money that they took from Damascus. Remind the Court of Appeals is still waiting and probably writing an opinion on whether they followed the election laws on that or not. So they very well could be writing a fat check back to the city of Damascus on that. Then last...
I'm sorry, did you say city of Damascus?
Yes.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Rise from the ashes like a phoenix.
Then the Planning Commission.
I'm so glad I'm in Canby.
There's a few, the last meeting I didn't give Planning Commission a report, so I'm going to recap on those. First one, it was the July 9th meeting, which was the one you may have heard about, where there was a postponement due to some zone confusion issues that we will probably be hearing, so I won't talk too much about that particular one. Then on July 23rd, we had a site design review, type 3 application for a building for the Gustafson Insurance Office is moving over to the Redwood Professional Plaza at 1530 Southeast 3rd, and that was approved. There was also a the city was actually essentially applying for a special lot designation and partitioning for the Milano Road pump station for an easement lot that was actually had to be severed off, I guess, and that was approved by the Planning Commission. Then there was the, let's see, on August 13th, more recently, we had the Cougar Run subdivision was approved, which was a 23-lot subdivision on Southeast 10th Avenue and near Teakwood, and that was near Faust, if you don't know where that is. It's a 5-acre parcel, and that was approved. Then the coming up, or no, August 27th was approved, the big one, which was the 90-lot subdivision that we dealt with the development concept plans on the east, would be northwest side of Ivy there, or I guess South Ivy, but going northwest direction. The Riverside Park subdivision, which is the 90-lot subdivision. That one was approved. And then September 10th, was the consideration of the 38 townhome question again, which will be coming in front of us. And then the next meeting is September 24th, coming up next Monday. There are a annexation requested by Icon Construction, which has 3 tax lots on it near North Pine and North Oak Street, near 15th and 16th Avenues. That area annexation. There's also a request for a subdivision of 6 single-family residential homes near 480 South Pine Street, and Hope Village is seeking to do an expansion. So those will be coming up at the next Planning Commission meeting. And if you didn't catch it, our staff sent out planning staff sent out a fantastic development analysis that shows the progress of all this. This is fantastic. I think this should probably be sent out to us more frequently. It was really nice to see this report.
Yeah, this was great. They brought it to the Traffic Safety Commission as the first I saw it. Sorry. That was the first I saw it, and they had just completed it like the day before that. So yeah, kudos. I'm really glad to see this, and I'd like to see it kept going, updated, and sent to us often. Yes. Thank you for mentioning that, Tyler.
And that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you all. Appreciate the updates. Chock full of information as always. We'll move into the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of the minutes of the September 5th, 2018 City Council work session and regular meeting.
Second. That was a big one.
Motion's been made by Council President Dale and seconded by Councilor Hensley to approve the consent agenda, which simply includes the approval of the minutes of the September 5th, 2018 City Council work session and regular meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's been approved 6-0. Moving into our resolution and ordinances.
You have, excuse me, you have one ordinance on the agenda tonight. It's ordinance 1495. This is authorizing a contract with PBS Engineering and Environmental Incorporated for transportation, engineering, and technical services of North Quiet Zone improvements, North Elm Street, North Grant Street, and North Ivy Street, and declaring an emergency.
Great, thank you, Kim. Mr. Robinson.
Yes, I am going to defer to our Public Works Director, Jennifer Klein, on this presentation. She has done just an outstanding job of developing the scope of this project. We're excited to see it moving forward, and we're excited to have Jennifer shepherding it through for us.
Thanks. Mayor, Council, I am pleased to bring this resolution, or actually ordinance, to you guys tonight for the Quiet Zone project. I just want to give you a little bit of history because there may be some confusion on how this project came together and the pieces that we've put in place before this ordinance. So Matilda did some great work back about 2 years ago in planning and working with the Union Pacific Railroad and the Federal Rail Authority to start discussions on what it would look like to have a quiet zone here in Canby. The main intersections that they focused on were Grant, Ivy, and Elm Street. Unfortunately, the other intersection crossings don't. There's some more challenges and higher costs to try and get a quiet zone through those crossings. I won't go into detail, but so our focus is basically these three intersections. There's a second part to this, which I think we just brought to you not too long ago about the ODOT IOF grant. That's a piece of this. It doesn't focus on the channelization and signing and other improvements that are needed for the quiet zone crossing, but it does focus on the repair at the intersection for the sidewalk ramp on Elm Street. So that grant funding helps pay for a portion of the funds that are needed to do that construction piece. And also for engineering, they can be used for engineering as well. So today, we just got the signed grant from ODOT. So moving forward, those funds have been approved for us to use. This is the second piece that for the whole project in total, and this is bringing on PBS. We did an RFQ a few months back as well, soliciting for engineering firms. We accepted 4 firms for a list to pull from, and PBS was selected through that process for the Quiet Zone project, and primarily because they've had some experience. I believe it was down in the city of Woodburn with doing a Quiet Zone project there. They have contracted with a consultant. Most of them use him as well. He's pretty familiar in the field of doing this kind of work. It's in the packet. For the scope of work, it's Wiser Rail Engineering, so we'll be using that consultant to help move the Quiet Zone process through. One of the reasons why this is only focused on the first 30% of the design is because in early discussions with PBS, we found that there's probably some more challenges moving forward. We've learned that maybe one of the key players that was in discussions with Matilda previously has either moved on from the position or has taken another position. I can't say for certain, I can't remember who that was, but I know PBS discovered that there may have been some changes in who we negotiated with originally to propose an NOI. So I just wanted to take a step back and kind of get like a stronger focus on what we need to do moving on in the design piece, and then bring that forward to you guys and have kind of a solid plan, schedule, and budget at that point. I don't feel comfortable at this point moving forward with a cost estimate with so many unknowns at this point. On top of it, we need to secure some right-of-way and move one of the larger transmission lines with PGE that could change some costs as well. So this is just kind of like the first phase of the design, and then we'll come back with a second phase moving forward. So
Jennifer, with the change in positions that you're referencing, like how much does that delay us, do you think, in your opinion?
It's hard to say. With not really knowing exactly who it is, I have a feeling that it's one of the people that Matilda worked heavily with and supporting, and you know, there's always challenges working with the railroad. It could be just nothing. Maybe there's somebody else that stepped in that's going to fulfill that role and be as a strong supporter. So it's kind of up in the air until we kind of kick the project off and find out what's really in front of us. I wish I had a better answer, sorry.
No, and truly it's probably really an unfair question, in all honesty. I mean, we don't know, because we're just getting kind of our legs back under us, it sounds like, and we don't even know. So you answered it just fine. It was,
yeah, for lack of better words, this project's probably been delayed about 1.5 to 2 years. So there's been some changes, sure, obviously. Yeah.
Well, I'm just glad that we're still, and truly in the last probably 6 months, Rick, I mean, yeah, we've had a lot of traction on it. So I'm just glad that we're still in there throwing punches and trying to keep it alive and moving. So, I mean, the big support and help with ODOT has been great. And, you know, yes, I knew the railroad was going to be, they're always difficult. And then that transmission pole with PG is not going to be a small hill to climb. So I'm glad that we're still just slugging away, though.
Yeah, each of those are more timing and schedule rather than addressing the net overall impact of the change. And that's the analysis that UP Railroad does when they evaluate the proposals that the city makes for the quiet zone, is to see if there is any increase in risk associated with the crossing as a result of the changes that are being proposed by the public agency. The additional work that will be done on Ivy, Grant, and in fact Elm Street is work that you are aware of because we've spoken of it in the past, and that's essentially constructing center medians that will prevent traffic from making wide turns and crossing over that center line. It also will extend to the north of First Avenue to prevent left turns in the future. So it'll be right in, right out on First Avenue, which frankly is something that should have happened a long time ago, because that creates a pretty significant traffic hazard. So those are changes we were aware of. We've budgeted for those medians construction for the last couple of years, so we know that we have it in our urban renewal budget as it is. The other costs, as Jennifer has done an excellent job of describing, we'll be able to more clearly determine as we move forward past the 30% stage, as she's outlined here. I do need to particularly compliment the work that Jennifer's done in developing first the RFQ and then the scope of work for the RFP on this project. You can see her expertise and her talent and the professionalism with which the document's been put together. To answer a question that will undoubtedly be asked, we are requesting that you declare an emergency, because this is such an important project. We're anxious to get it started, and we'd like to have this work and a preliminary determination done by the end of November. Through 30%, and this will give us an opportunity to get started 30 days faster than we would otherwise be able to get started. The delay period for the moving of the PGE pole is, as I recall, about 6 months from the date that the plans have been completed and approved. So PG&E won't schedule to move a pole until they know that they have an approved plan. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, and unfortunately from my experience, I found out in the past that PGE won't even look at the plans until you have 90% design plans.
Yeah.
So once you hit 90% and you send them the plans and then they give the approval, at that point, you can get them on that 6 month, which you may have to delay the construction to meet their schedule, so.
Our goal is to have this thing under construction by the end of this fiscal year, which is the end of June. And we have an opportunity to meet that deadline depending on what happens with our in our relationship with UP Railroad, and ODOT's been wonderful in working on this project. I say that, it doesn't sound right in my ears either.
Didn't sound right here either.
But they have been, and we really appreciate the leadership that they've shown and the willingness to turn the project over to Jen and her team.
Thank you, Rick. Yes, Councilor Smith.
Thank you, Smith. My question is not, I support the quiet zone and working this and approval of this, but it's a question, why are we passing a law to authorize a contract? Why are we passing an ordinance? Why do we not have the first reading and second reading if we're passing an ordinance to approve this contract?
There's a provision in our charter that says over $50,000 requires an ordinance, so that's simply it.
And there will be a second reading.
So there will be a second reading.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so any contract over 50,000 has to come to you guys for an ordinance.
So this becomes a permanent law of the city of Canby?
Yeah.
And there's many of them like it. Yeah, it does seem a little odd, but that's the way the charter reads.
There ought to be a law.
Anything else? Okay, any other questions for Jennifer?
No.
Great, Jennifer. Thank you. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
I move to approve ordinance number 1495, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with PBS Engineering and Environmental Incorporated for transportation engineering and technical services of North Quiet Zone improvements, North Elm Street, North Grant Street, North Ivy Street, and declaring an emergency, to come up for second reading October 3rd, 2018. Second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Hensley, seconded by Councilor Height to approve ordinance 1495, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with PBS Engineering and Environmental, Inc. for the transportation, engineering, and technical services of North Quiet Zone improvements, which is North Elm Street, North Grant Street, North Ivy Street, and declaring an emergency, and to come up for second reading on October 3rd, 2018. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That passes 6-0. Concludes that piece. There's nothing in the new business. Mr. City Administrator, any business staff reports on your end?
I would just comment that I was contacted here in the last week or so by a representative from Business View magazine, which is an online business and professional publication that provides information, updates, and articles about best practices in both public and private sector. They like the work that we've done in our downtown business district, and so they and we are working to see if we can develop an article that showcases our best practices, and it's coming together pretty well. It looks like it may be something that will hit the press room about November.
Great opportunity. Perfect. Thank you. Anything else, sir? Second opportunity for citizen input. Any input there, Roger? Good evening. How are you? It's good to see you. It's good to see you. Oh, well, thank you. We'll do action review.
You have approved the consent agenda, and you've approved ordinance 1495 to come up for second reading on October 3rd.
Thank you, Kim. Joe, do we have an exec session tonight?
Yeah, Joe.
Great. Camby, thank you very much. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. I'll second, Sarah.
There we go.
Motion has been made by Councilor Spoon and seconded by Councilor Hensley to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? 6
Paying attention.
yeas to adjourn. Good night, Camby. Thank you. Thank you.